Arya, hey, it's Professor Thomas with an overview of the last 3 tests he did in English. I went ahead and made a review sheet. If you take a look up here, you're going to see that we have the questions he got wrong from test B05. Here is 69F, and here's 68G. When you did 3 tests of 75, that gave us quite a bit of information as far as what you see that you're needing some review on and some rules that you might need to learn. So when you go ahead and look at all this, this is translated into the green down over here. So I listed everything off. Let's just start up here. Here's the dot dot. The question you missed was 68 on test 69F. A combo problem, that's only one. That's on 68G. Hazy, mummy wedges, formula B, abandoned boxcar, structural clues, and pruning. All right. So first thing is look over here and see that the #1 rule that I need to teach you here is abandoned boxcar because it's the most prevalent. Then the second one is going to be our mummy wedges. All right. And then pruning. So I'm going to go ahead and give you the location of where this stuff is. So for a dot comma, you're going to go ahead and you're going to watch this on the Learn It tab. And the name of this movie is called The Cosmic Double Dots. All right, so go under Learn It, find the movie, and you'll like that movie. It's filmed in Turkey and it's about aliens. It's really a crazy movie. All right, so that's the first one. It's under Learn It and it's called Cosmic Double Dots. All right, so write this down on a separate sheet of paper. Over here, the next rule, the combo one we'll hold off on. The next rule here is also going to be on the Learn It tab, and this is called Footsteps at the Martin Hayes Tower. Footsteps at the Martin Hayes Tower, that's under the Learn It. You'll like that one. That's filmed in Dubai, and it's about a haunted condominium in the center of Dubai. It's like 60 stories tall, and I broke in there, and there's supposed to be ghosts and stuff in there, so you'll actually see me going in there, and there's all kinds of nonsense going on with ghosts. All right. The third one we're going to take a look at here is Formula B, and this is going to be under a different tab. This is under the Fix It tab. All right. All right, Fix It. Boy, my marker is terrible here. Fix It tab, Formula B. All right. Formula B entails 4 things. The one that you missed here is something called the anti-razor blade, all right? And if you watch that video, it's a good one. The most important part of that video, if it gets a little bit long, because there's 4 components, the one that you want to get to is Formula B anti-razor blade, all right? The next thing over here, abandoned boxcar, and this is a movie from the Learn It tab. Just find abandoned boxcar. It's, I think, episode #1. Structural clues, I'm working on that movie right now, so we'll have to hold off on that. And Learn It for this rule here, which is another very prevalent one for you. It's called the pruning technique, and the name of the movie you can find. It's under the Learn It tab. It's called The Mystery of the Precariously Propped Prunes at Harvard. All right, it's the pruning technique, and you'll like that one. That's a funny movie as well. It's filmed at Harvard. Okay, so those are the ones that we're going to look at. I think probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you the combo one myself and the mummy wedge one, because this is another movie that's in the making right now. The one that you missed is level 2 mummy wedges, so I'm just going to hand teach you that. And then the structural clues is one of the ones I'll probably hand teach you here in our lesson today. That's our overview, okay? So I would like you to watch these movies that we talked about. Cosmic Double Dots under Learn It. Footsteps, the Martin Hayes Tower under Learn It. Fix It, Anti-Razor Blade. It's Formula B Anti-Razor Blade. And find that under the Fix It. Learn It tab, Abandoned Boxcar, and Learn It tab, Mystery of the Precariously Propped Prunes. All right, so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll just start working with the most prevalent one. I think what we'll do first is we'll do abandoned boxcar, and then we're going to just learn some of the other rules and then combine them with the combo. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at banded boxcar. All right, so here we are in test B05. It's the first problem, problem number 52. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to teach you really fast a banded boxcar, but I would like you to watch that movie because you'll understand how the rule was invented. Okay, in the movie you're going to see that there's an abandoned boxcar, and the reason an abandoned boxcar became haunted is because what happened was the train engine brought the train car, the boxcar, into the train yard and then unhitched it and left it there. And when it got abandoned, it was empty, and then a ghost got inside. The reason that this is not able to move around is because this boxcar is dependent on the engine, and the engine can drive around and go wherever it wants because it's independent. All right? The analogy here is a train, the engine independent. The train hitch is going to be equivalent to our comma. Then we're going to have a dependent clause. All right, so think of it this way. We have an independent, a comma, and a dependent clause. That's what's entailed in our sentences. All right, now let's say that we added another boxcar on the back, okay, and we labeled that a dependent clause as well. You're going to see how this operates here. All right, so real quick, I'll give you a sentence. Let's write it up here. So let's just say I like tennis. And you can tell that that right away is an independent clause. It is a complete sentence. Then we're going to put a comma here. So this is our engine. And then now we have to write a dependent clause. Now here's the thing in Junior Genius that your teachers won't teach you. What comes in the dependent clause is a mini definition of the word that sits right before the comma. And most of the time, that word, about 80% of the time, is going to be a noun. All right, so think of I like tennis, and now we need a definition, a mini definition of tennis. I like tennis, a sport on a court. All right, a sport on a court is a mini definition of the word right before the comma, which is tennis, and tennis is a noun. All right. So that's what you see down over here, independent, comma, dependent. Now, what you can do is, this is a different rule, and I'm just quickly teaching you this really fast. This is called the comma staircase. If we were to put another comma in here, then what we have here, if it's a dependent clause, it would define the word right before it. And this word here, court, just so happens to be a noun. I like tennis, a sport on a court, a surface made of clay. A surface made of clay is a mini definition of court, and court is a noun. I like tennis, comma, a sport on a court, comma, something made of clay. All right, does that make sense? So we just got two rules out of one. That's the gist of it. Now remember, the most important thing to write down is independent, comma, dependent. Dependent, just like definition. Your dependent clause will give you a mini definition of the word right before it. Now let's go in and take a look at problem 52. So it's important that we identify the beginning of the sentence here and the end of the sentence is down over here after edge. Step number one is look inside the answer choices and look in the non-underlined portion, and you want to trace in your punctuation. So in answer choice F, here's F, there's a comma here, and then I look and see, are there any more commas or punctuation in the rest of the sentence? In this case, no. So this is what they're asking you. They're asking you one comma, which has got to be an independent and a dependent, or vice versa. If we do a dependent first and then an independent, what you're going to see is the dependent clause a lot of times is going to have something to do with time. An example of this would be like in 2020, comma, Professor Thomas went to Egypt. Okay, so it's time related if it's going to be on the front like that. Okay, not always, but a lot of times it will be that way. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at answer choice F. So we read from the beginning of the punctuation and we stop at the comma in F after gathered. About 100 people had already gathered. That's an independent clause. All right, so here we have gathered. That's a thing that they're doing. Now, a guardrail was the only thing separating them from the crater's edge. This describes in a mini definition kind of a way of how they're gathering. they're gathering at the crater's edge, and there's a small little guardrail there. That works. We put a dot by it, all right? If you come over here and you put a comma over here, now we already know that in answer choice G, that's an independent clause. And so we read from the second part, a guardrail was the only thing separating them from the crater's edge. You see, in answer choice G, that's an independent clause, and that violates the abandoned boxcar rule. Here, you see that there is no comma here. So you have to read from the beginning of the sentence to the end of the sentence and see here, we already know that if you put a comma here, it's two independents put together with no punctuation, and that's called a run-on sentence. H out. Now, let's read this one and check. We have to read from the beginning and make sure that you recognize that there's no punctuation, and answer choice J is the same as no change. However, there's no comma in there, so we get rid of it. Read it and see if you start running out of breath. Ready? About 100 people had already gathered, a guardrail, the only thing separating from the crater's edge. I feel like that's 3 sentences, 3 lines long, and I feel that there's some natural pause in there. It just didn't feel natural. Here, J is out, answer choice F, because the dependent clause is giving you more of a definition of where they're gathering. Where are they gathering? At the crater's edge. Let's look at the next problem. So problem number 50, we're going to use a bunch of different rules. If you can take a note, I'm going to blaze through this really fast. And so the first rule we're going to deal with is mummy wedges. A mummy wedge separates the noun away from the verb and gives you an extra bit of information. Okay, that bit of information is non-essential, and it defines the word right before it, which is a noun. Since it's non-essential, we can cross that out. Some mummy wedges that you're going to see if you watch the movie. The first 3 I teach in movie number 1 is called Curse of the Mummy Wedges. It's in, of, and with. The second movie is Mummy Wedges Level 2, and this is called the Alien Bee in the Bottle Invasion of Washington, D.C., and that's the movie I'm working on right now. All right? So basically, if we just say something like this, we just give you your name, Aryaa, and then we say something over here is cool. The noun is here and the verb is over here. Now we're going to separate the noun away from the verb with the mummy wedge. All right, there's no punctuation that's needed. You're just going to put in, first of all, the word in. All right, Aryaa in 11th grade is cool. In 11th grade is non-essential information that defines the word right before, which is a noun. If I use the word of, Aryaa of Plymouth is cool. Of Plymouth is non-essential information that leads you back to a mini definition of the word right before. You see how this is similar to what we saw in abandoned boxcar? And the last one is with. All right, Aryaa with dark hair is cool. With dark hair is extra non-essential information and can be crossed out, and it defines the word right before that. Okay? So those are some words there. Now, you're going to see in the second movie when it gets published, we see that we've got the alien bee and the bottle. So if you think of a bee and a bumblebee, a bee in a bottle, and you take the bee and the bottle, and then you whiz the bee around the bottle, you're going to see that we're dealing with the location. All right, so if I've got a bee, and the bee is above the bottle, the bee is below the bottle, the bee is in the bottle, the bee is on the bottle, the bee is with the bottle, and so forth, okay? The bee flies to the bottle, the bee flies from the bottle, all right? These are words that start extra non-essential pieces of information, and we already know that you don't want to use a mummy wedge and a comma together for the most part, okay? So here we have the word on. Aryaa on the chair is cool. All right. We don't need a comma. It's extra non-essential bits of information. So right away when I look at my choices, I see here's a mummy wedge violation, a comma, and the word on. So I cross that out. Answer choice G, it's the same thing. All right. Now what we would do is we would look over here and we will take a look at the next problem. The next problem here is H. There's nothing, and then answer choice J, there's one comma. So let's trace in the comma after wall, and we're going to get rid of this comma right here. The beginning of the sentence is here, and the end of the sentence is here. Abandoned boxcar tells us we're going to read to the comma and stop and label it independent or dependent. Baca imagined the mural on the channel wall. That's an independent clause. And here it says as a timeline. As a timeline, is that a mini definition of the word that sits right before it, the channel wall? No, the channel wall is a piece of structure made out of cement. Also, you're going to see that the word as is level to mummy wedge. So there's a mummy wedge violation here. You don't need a comma in the word as. All right? The correct answer on that one is going to be H. You've got mummy wedges, and then this problem here is abandoned boxcar style. And you see that this deals with mummy wedges. So let's take a look at the next problem. Problem 15 is a classic abandoned boxcar. So if you look over here, there's going to be a comma after all of them. So I just trace it in right away, no change. There's a comma, comma, comma. So whatever you read here is going to be placed in here. Seeing dark storm clouds, that's going to be a dependent clause. Heading into dark storm clouds, dependent. As we headed into dark storm clouds, and frightened by dark storm clouds ahead. All right, dependent. So now we know that this part has to be independent because that's not the question. That's not what they're asking us. Drops of rain began to streak my window. All right, so here we have drops of rain starting right here. Okay, so is that something that's frightening? No, we crossed that one out. Seeing. When you see it, does that make it begin? No, so A is out. As we headed into a dark storm cloud, drops of rain began to streak my window. I like that one. And then answer choice P says, heading into dark storm clouds, drops of rain began to streak my window. All right, that one works as well. I would read them and see which one sounds a little bit better. The correct answer on this one when you use your ears is as we headed into the dark storm clouds. Now, why is that? This is a different rule. You're going to see that we have an ed here and an ing. So this deals with tense. Ing is going to be present tense. I am kicking a ball. That's present. And ed is going to be past tense. So if you look down over here, we're going to see what's going on in the sentence. All right. So it says up here, the plane taxied. This is a story not going on right now. This is a story that the person is telling. So if you have to, you got to look back up at the previous paragraph and kind of see here, quickly sped. Sped is past tense. So that's going to match with the ed on that one. It's a tense rule, but we're using abandoned boxcar as the jump off to correct the sentences and get out the ones that don't make sense. 15 is C. So problem number 47, I'm going to teach you another quick rule here. It's the Mr. Chung rule. And this is under the Learn It tab. It's also under the Review It. You will eventually have to know this, so you might want to watch the video, all right? And then you can watch the movie for the story. Basically, you're going to learn em dashes, double commas, comma space, and parentheses all do the same thing. They present non-essential information. We already know that non-essential information is also mummy wedge style in, of, and with. You learned in the last question. All right. So what that does is this mummy wedge garbage is non-essential and can be crossed out, but basically separates the noun from the verb. So if you put a noun over here on the left of Mr. Chung and a verb over here, you could do the same thing. Mr. Chung and mummy wedges is virtually the same thing, only punctuation is used with Chung, and mummy wedges, there's no punctuation. You do not have commas separating this off. A mummy wedge is already a separator, okay? So if I use the dashes, it would say something like Aryaa dash, a kid from Plymouth dash is cool. Aryaa is cool. Noun, Aryaa, verb is cool. The commas would be the same thing on that. since what's between the dashes, the commas, the brackets, and your mummy wedges are non-essential information, we can cross it out. But what's in there should give you a mini definition of the word that's right before it, okay? And usually it's going to be a noun. Not always, but a lot of times it is. And we'll talk about that, why there's more nouns in the world than verbs. A noun is a person, place, or a thing, and a verb is an action. So it's 4 versus 1. I think that according to this logic, it's going to be 4 times more likely that the word before the Mr. Chung dashes, commas, or brackets, or before the abandoned boxcar, comma, or before the mummy wedge is usually going to be a noun. All right. First thing we're going to do is look at 47. And here's 47. Beginning of the sentence is up here. And then what we want to do is trace in our punctuation. So here we go. Trace this in here after waste. And you know that there's a comma right here also. Now, Mr. Chung tells us that what's between the commas, if you cross it out, the sentence should still make sense. Aryaa, a kid from Plymouth, is cool. Aryaa is cool. We cross this garbage out in the middle. Okay, so here's the commas. Waist overalls here can be crossed out. Waist overalls were made out of denim. We label that. From waist overalls to denim is an independent clause. If you put a comma here after denim, this needs to be a mini definition of the word that sits right before it, which is usually a noun, and in this case it is denim. Is this a mini definition of denim? A durable cotton used blah, 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 blah? Yes. So therefore, that's going to be the correct answer, because a durable cotton, this is a dependent clause. So in 47, the correct answer for 47 is going to be the comma on that one. So quick review, if you look at answer choice B, it's a dot comma. That's 2 sentences that are complete on both sides, or 2 independent clauses, and there's some type of relationship. If I said, I like black, dot comma, Aryaa likes blue. I like black is independent, dot comma, Aryaa likes blue, independent. Black and blue are both colors, they're linked together. You see that the back end of this is a dependent clause, so that's going to be a violation on that one. All right. Here, if you put this was a durable cotton, you put a comma here. This is what you see in answer choice D. It's independent, comma, independent. That violates abandoned boxcar, so that one is going to be out. C, if you read it, you feel like this sentence is starting to get long and clunky, because you're going to have to read from here all the way to the end of the sentence, and you see that there's some punctuation that needs to be in there. Therefore, 47 is going to be A. So here we are in problem number 26. It's test 69F. All right. So let's go ahead and look at it. It's 26. And here you see that we've got a comma here. So we always read from the beginning of the sentence and trace in the punctuation. All right. You're going to learn the technique called pruning. In the movie, The Mystery, the Precariously Propped Prunes, that means cross out dependent clauses on the front, in the middle, in the back, and mummy wedges if you run into them. All right. Then you're going to see we're going to trace in the comma and no change right over here. Okay. So let's go ahead and start reading. When the time came, that's a dependent clause. It starts off in the beginning, time relationship, so we can prune it out. Now it says a transmitter was borrowed from the U.S. Navy and hired Major J. Andrews White to describe the action. That's an independent clause. All right. If a comma is used here, that means that starting at the word at all the way down to the bottom at loudspeaker, it has to be a dependent clause that gives you a mini definition of the word right before, which is action. So let's check and see if it's independent or dependent. At RCA's request, comma, store manager, theater owner, municipal workers across the country set up loudspeakers. That's an independent clause. That is going to be knocked out for F. And simple is best according to the razor blade. If you use any choice other than that, you're seeing you're making a run-on sentence. So if you have the option of making the sentence shorter by deleting it or omitting it or using a period, the answer is going to be the best when it's shortest. Short and simple, 26. But you saw we did the same thing for abandoned boxcar in 69F, problem 26. Aryaa, here we are on test 68G. and we're going to do problem number 46. So let's review what you've learned so far. One, you've learned abandoned boxcar with an independent and a dependent. And you know that that can be switched around with a dependent and an independent in the other direction. And if that's the case, there's going to be usually, but not always, this dependent clause is going to have something to do with time. All right. Second thing that we talked about was pruning. Pruning means that we can cross out dependent clauses if we find them in the beginning or the end. And then we learned Mr. Chung, where we're going to see a dependent clause, comma, a dependent clause, comma, and a dependent. If you see three dependent clauses in a row, the dependent clause in the middle can be crossed out. Once again, remember, dependent clauses are going to give you a mini definition of the word right before it, in abandoned boxcar or in Mr. Chung. All right. Here, this one deals with time. Now, in the last problem that we did, we learned the technique called pruning. Pruning, get rid of mummy wedges, dependent clauses, front, back, and the middle. Make the sentence shorter. From the abandoned boxcar, you learn that we have to trace in our punctuation in the underlined and the non-underlined. So in 46, let's get started. Here is the beginning of the sentence, and the end of the sentence is down over here after overalls. I see that in the sentence there's a non-underlined portion, comma, here, and it looks like there's a non-underlined portion here as well. All right, there's another comma over here. So we trace in our punctuation, and now let's start labeling. In the late 1800s, that is a dependent clause, and it deals with time. You see that, 1800s? We can prune that out. Now, clothing store owner Levi Strauss patented the practice of putting rivets. Okay? So if you look at this sentence and you disregard this answer here, you see that after you get rid of the dependent clause from pruning, that this becomes an independent clause. Now, if you cross this out from the pruning technique, and you cross this out because it's a mummy wedge, you're going to see that the sentence pruned out says this: clothing store owner Levi Strauss patented the practice of putting rivets. That's still an independent clause. And now you see that with the pruning technique, we got rid of all this monkey business on the back end, and we got the dependent clause off on the front end because it's time relationship. That's going to lead you to the correct answer here for 46. So pruning for this particular problem gets you the answer choice. Let's take a look at one more problem we're going to prune. All right, the last problem we're going to do with pruning is on test 68G again, and we're going to do problem number 57, okay? And here it is right here. We're going to do some pruning. So 57 is here. And the beginning of the sentence looks like it's up here. And the end of the sentence is down here. You're going to start seeing that long sentences like this, 4 lines long, are really hard to work with. So that's where pruning comes in. Step number 1 in pruning. Let's go ahead and trace in all the punctuation. Here's a comma. I trace it in on my test here. Here's a comma. I trace it in here. All right. There's the period, and that's it. All right. In the answer choices, when you glance over here, you see that this is a mummy wedge problem. So we have 2. The bumblebee flies to the bottle. It presents non-essential information. Okay. And if we were to come over here and put our noun on the front, Aryaa in 11th grade is cool. You see that this whole thing, as we mentioned earlier, is extra non-essential information. So here's our noun, Aryaa, and our verb is cool. All right. So if you look at in 11th grade, the job of that is to give you like a mini definition, as we saw kind of like with Mr. Chung. So in means that it's going to be in laid back. Of, which means it's of kind of originating from that, and to means it's moving forward. All right. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. This is called a mummy wedge definition. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look, label the sentence number 1. So as gene lovers have entered the corporate world, it's a dependent clause. The second part, they have popularized the casual work look. That's an independent clause. That is abandoned boxcar. And here they've entered. So when you enter something, that feels like entering is like the beginning. So it's a time relationship kind of a thing. We can prune this out. Dependent clauses are non-essential and can be knocked out because you still have an independent after. That makes the sentence quite a bit shorter. So here's what we have. They have popularized a casual work look. So we have the noun right before the comma is casual work look. So what comes after in this dependent clause here, which is part of the underlined portion, wearing jeans as a basic wardrobe, blah, 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 that's a dependent clause. That is going to give you a definition of casual work look. What's a casual work look? It's wearing jeans and basic wardrobe that's going to seem laid back because it's casual, but it's going to be ambitious new professional, which is going to be our work look. All right. Does that make sense? So remember, we've got abandoned boxcar. We prune off the independent or the dependent clause on the beginning. And then now what it's time to do is in the underlying portion here, you already know that this is going to present a mini definition of the word that's right before it. Okay. So here, this is a mummy wedge, and a mummy wedge is pretty much the same thing as what we saw here, but we don't use commas. Not only did we use the dependent clause to define casual work look, so we reviewed abandoned boxcar, which is the number 1 rule that you need to work on. And number 2, now we introduce this whole thing here with the mummy wedges, which really in real life is called a prepositional phrase. All right. So this whole mummy wedge thing is going to define the wardrobe. It's a basic laid back professionalism kind of a look. Okay. Does that make sense? But it's non-essential. It's giving you more information. So now, since you know that this is a mummy wedge, the definition of a mummy wedge in, it's like inside. A bee goes in a bottle. The bee is actually physically in the bottle. So is the laid back in the wardrobe? You go in the wardrobe, which is like a closet, and then you grab a laid back style? No. So you see, that violates a mummy wedge definition. Up here too, does the laid back style go to the wardrobe? Hey, let's get a laid back style. Let's walk over to the wardrobe. So in answer choice A, this word to, I am flying to the bottle. The bumblebee flies to the bottle. That violates a mummy wedge definition as well. Of means it originates from that. So a laid back style originated from the basic wardrobe. Okay? Here it says as they seem laid back. They, who is they? This is a hazy pronoun. You don't know who they is referring to. So this almost feels like it's the people that are wearing it. Okay, so the gene lovers are the people, and they is referring back to that, and that's distorting the sentence because that's not really what they're trying to say. Here, remember, a mummy wedge in, of, or with defines the word right before it. Do you see how answer choice D refers all the way back to gene lovers, but that's not what a mummy wedge is supposed to be doing. So the correct answer on this one is going to be answer choice B. It's a little bit easier to see when you prune out the dependent clauses and then you start thinking about the components of the sentence. Also, keep in mind, we just talked about mummy wedges, and in this case, it's a definition of a mummy wedge. All right, the next problem we're going to go over is on test 69F. And it's problem number 45. The rule that we're going to work with here is something called hazy. And the movie is called Footsteps at the Martin Hayes Tower. All right, this is filmed in Dubai, and it's really kind of a cool movie, so try and watch this one. Basically, from the movie, I'll give you an overview, that there are some creepy noises. It sounds like somebody's dancing above one of the floors when the security guard's in there. It's an abandoned 51-story um, condominium complex in Dubai, and they built this thing really, really tall. And as they were doing, two things kind of happened, and this is a true story. So, two things. One, the shadow from the tower, 51-story tower, at a certain time during the day, it cast a huge shadow on one of the mosques, like one of the most famous, biggest mosques in Dubai. And everybody freaked out. That's like super unauspicious. It's like really unlucky. Number two, as they started digging up the site, they found it was an ancient burial ground. So it's super unauspicious. And then as they were building this tower, all kinds of weird stuff happened, and people were seeing stuff. And a guy fell off like the 40th store. He was like, putting a window in or something, and then he like just fell and just fell to his death. So all kinds of weird stuff happened. And then the construction workers, boycotted and said, "Yeah, we're not gonna. I'm not doing that anymore." So they couldn't find any workers to finish the building, so it's been empty. And the security guard, and this is all kinds of stories about this. It's a very famous place, and there's all kinds of stories. Well, I spoofed and got my way in there, and I was looking around. It turns out that the top on the roof, I saw these clouds, and in the clouds there was these things that kind of appeared like words. So let me just give you them. These are called hazy pronouns, and these words are very general, and they're not specific enough. It, these, them, those, that. All right, these are called hazy pronouns, and they're not specific enough. Now, what's going to happen is you're going to have a sentence, and maybe there's going to be two nouns in here. Like, for example, if I say a dog and a cat, and then later in the sentence I refer to it as an it. The dog and cat ran in the backyard. It really made a lot of noise. So you got a dog and a cat, and then it says it made a lot of noise. Well, you don't know which one it is referring to. You see how this is just too general? So it's better to use something more specific. So a dog and a cat running in the backyard. The dog made a lot of noise. So you're gonna make it a little bit longer, but it's hazy if you don't. So if you use one word like it, these, them, those, that, the word is too hazy, even though it's short like razor blade, but it's hazy. So if you were to put hazy and razor blade in an arena together, razor blade is going to be used more frequently. The shortest answer usually is going to be the rightest one, unless the answer choice is hazy, unless the answer choice has a hazy pronoun in it. So you always want to refer back to that, all right? So with that in mind, as we come over here, you see the word it. So that's a hazy pronoun. We can cross it out. And if you look up here, we have Miss Judith, and we have a mural. So there's two nouns in here. So when you come over here to make a large, is the mural large, or is Judith making something large? You see how this also is hazy? So we can get both of those down. Now, both answer choice C and D talk about a mural, and that leads you back to the right noun. So both of these are actually correct, but razor blade says we want to be as short as possible, yet not hazy. So A and B are potentially shorter, but they're hazy, and C is shorter and not hazy than D. D would work, but C has 3 words, and D has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words. So when you combined the razor blade rule with the hazy rule, you want to be short and simple, but not hazy. And that's a movie online called Montezuma's Razor Arrowhead, and that's really a fun movie as well, filmed in Arizona, and my assistant Sharon is actually in that movie. So that will give you the correct answer for problem number 45 is going to be answer choice C. The next problem is going to be coming from test 69F, and it's problem number 68, okay? So first thing here is we're going to find the beginning of the sentence. Here's 68 right here. And the beginning of the sentence is up here at this, and it ends down over here at chromosome. So some things you've learned with me already. Pruning means to cut out dependent clauses and Mr. Chung stuff. So here's Mr. Chung's mouth. We can get rid of that, shorten the sentence up. Okay. Then we're going to look over here and just grab a choice. So here it is, chromosome. I just trace in a comma here. Now, the next step is to read from this to the comma and label it. This conversion supports the idea that the gene of color blindness is carried on the X chromosome. That's an independent clause. The second part, men have only one X chromosome. That's also an independent clause. That violates abandoned boxcar. That's the #1 rule for you to keep in mind. You cannot connect two independent clauses with a comma. So right away, you know that that answer choice is going to be out. If you were to put an extra word in here, since, that would turn this into a dependent clause in answer choice G. So this would be a dependent clause, comma, and then an independent. Let's put a dot by that because here's your comma here. All right. Now, answer choice J means there's nothing, so you'd have to read from the beginning of the sentence to the end to see if there's some kind of a natural pause in here. So watch and just see if I can do it without kind of naturally stumbling. This conversion supports the idea that gene color blindness is carried on the X chromosome. See how I kind of took a breath there? So I know there's got to be something there. I paused. It was starting to get long. I needed some type of a break right here. So I need punctuation in there. All right? We got two choices out, and now it's time to look over here at answer choice H. So this is called the Cosmic Double Dots, and the Cosmic Double Dots is the movie from the Learn It tab. It's filmed in Cappadocia, Turkey, and basically what you're going to see here is in the movie, the alien says, when I ask him, why did you come to Earth? He said, I love DQ. So that's the thing. So I love DQ. L stands for a list, D stands for a description, and Q stands for a direct quote. Furthermore, with the cosmic double dots, you could have an independent and a dependent, or you could have, vice versa, a dependent cosmic double dots and an independent. And believe it or not, your teachers probably don't know, but you could also have two independent clauses separated by a cosmic double dot. Remember, list, explanation, and a direct quote. That's the definition of a cosmic double dot. I would highly recommend watching that movie. So here, you see that we could use this chromosome thing here with the cosmic double dot. Because if we read from the beginning this to chromosome and label it, this conversion supports the idea that gene color blindness is carried on the X chromosome. That's an independent clause. And then now, this, men have only one X chromosome, is a description of the X chromosome. What's an X chromosome? It's something that men have. So this is independent, independent. And from our I love DQ, this would be not a list. It's not a quote because there's no quotation marks here. So it's going to be a description. The correct answer, therefore, 68 is going to be H, cosmic double dots from the Learn It tab. All right, so the next problem comes from test 68G, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at problem 73. So go ahead, pause the video until you pull out this problem, okay? I hate to have you fumble between three tests, but it is what it is. All right, so here we are. You got your test in front of you, 68G. It's problem 73. First thing that we want to do is find it. Here's 73 here, and then the beginning of that sentence is up here at in, and the end of that sentence is down over here. Step 2 is to trace in your punctuation. There's a comma after fields. There's a comma after applications, and that's in the non-underlined portion, okay? So now what we do is we label the components of the sentence. Here it says in other specific fields. That's a dependent clause. We label it D and prune it off. The concept of transportation, and the correct answer here is going to be has had wide-ranging applications. That's an independent clause. Don't forget to put in your correct answer here. As you're answering problem 73, you're going to need 72 put in there, all right? And that's something that kids have a tendency to miss, all right? You're going to notice that there's a comma here. There's a comma, and if we use answer choice A is the word and. This is what's called a fanboys. If you're not familiar with fanboys or you need a review, Hypnotizing the Chupacabra from the Learn It tab. It's a very crazy movie about some devil animal. It's like a devil dog that was on this really weird island I had to like sneak onto, and it's a real story. It's a total adventure. I can't believe I actually pulled that off. And they had like these weird horns on the dog. It's called a chupacabra. Look it up. They're weird characters. It's like and I guess they're dangerous or whatever. But anyways, fanboys. So fanboys stands for and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. All right? Basically, what you're going to see is you're going to have an independent clause, you're going to have a comma, then you're going to have a fanboys right in the middle here, and then you're going to have another independent clause. Think of it this way. A fanboys connects two independent clauses, like a dot comma, so it's similar. A fanboys and a dot comma links to independence. And it's the exception to the abandoned boxcar. Abandoned boxcar, as you remember, when we have one comma, is an independent comma and a dependent. Fanboys violates that because it's an exception. So if you are going to use the word here, and, you know that this independent clause on the front is going to have an independent on the back. So I just take my finger, put it over the word and read and see if it's independent. In the development of medical treatment for bacterial infections and cancer. That's dependent. That violates fanboys. So right away, answer choice A is going to be out. Number 2, if we check razor blade. Razor blade means simple is best. If we cross out the word and, see if that makes sense. It says transportation wide-ranging applications in development. Well, if you cross this word and out, the word that's left there is in, and in is a mummy wedge, and mummy wedges and commas don't sit next to each other. Remember we talked about that before? Even though this is a razor blade problem, you're getting a fanboys, and now you're seeing a mummy wedge. So there's a violation there. All right? So now we've got answer choice B and C, and if you look here is 2 words versus 3, I'm thinking razor blade, the better answer choice here. They both sound okay. C is the better choice for 73. The next problem comes from test B05, and we're going to take a look at the problem that is number 28. This is, go ahead and find it, and pause the video here, and then we'll come back. All right, so 28 is what's called a Formula B question and anti-razor blade. So Formula B anti-razor blade means we're going to try and build up what they ask us in the question with a noun and a verb. We're going to describe the noun and the verb, all right? Which choice offers specific information? Specific information means we want to build it up, and we're building up the method applied by the octopus. So it's a good idea to come over here and find octopus. So here's octopus up here in the previous sentence. That's our noun, and the verb is solve puzzles. So it looks like they have trial and error. And then now in the answer choices, we want to be real specific. So we're solving puzzles. Use a lot of strength to open the larger cubes. Focus on the cubes themselves. Remember, the key word here, which is our verb, is solve. So focus, is that another word for solving? Answer choice here, strength, is that solving? Because that's a verb. You're just thinking about rearranging and substituting verbs in and out. Opt to break. When you opt to break the larger cubes, is that solving a puzzle? Yeah, you're breaking the cube down. Put a dot by it. Or ruin the cube. Is when you ruin something, is that going to solve it? All you did here is just label your verbs in the answer choices and then find the noun and the verb in the question and then just match it. You're going to opt to break the larger cubes because that's going to help you solve the puzzle. Answer choice H, it's formula B, anti-razor blade. Remember, in the question itself up here, you have to identify that A, there's a noun and a verb that need to be more descriptive, and it needs to be built up. It's octopus is solving. And then you went in your answer choices and labeled your verbs and your nouns to make sure that you're on the right track. 28, anti-razor blade H. The last problem from your series of English tests here is coming from test B05. It's practice problem number 71 here. Go ahead and find this material. Pause the video until you find that and come back and we'll go over it. All right, so when you look at this problem here, this is called a structural clue problem. And think of it like this. You're going to have a clause. You're going to have a structural clue, which is your answer choice, which is one word, and then you're going to have another clause. We're going to use something called the good stinky rule. The good stinky rule says the author's vocabulary is either going to be plus or the author's vocabulary will be negative. So when you read the first part, just simply put plus or minus in the first and the second part. Nicholas cut himself free from the end of the jump to deploy his backpack. Well, when you cut yourself free, it sounds like, geez, that something didn't work, like you're bailing out. It's negative. Then forget about this here and read the next part. He proved Leonardo's pyramidal design could slow the parachute descent. Proving is positive. So now you know that these two clauses, clause A and clause B, are linked together with the structural clue that is going to be opposite. Okay, if I said something like this, I like hot dogs, plus, then we have a box here for a structural clue, and then it says blank are really super delicious. Okay, so I like hot dogs and really super delicious. These two clauses go in the same direction with the good stinky rule, so that means our answer choice has to have what we call a together. T together versus O opposite. So now when we come over here, the word still. I studied 10 minutes for my final. That's negative. Still, I got an A. So the word still means that it's going to be an opposite word, an opposite structural clue. Coincidentally, all right? Coincidentally, all right? If it's a coincidence, it's going to be together. Likewise will be opposite, and answer choice D, again, means you're going to do the same thing if you do it the first time and then you do it again, and the first time it's positive, the second time when you do it again will also be positive as well. So here you see we've labeled all of our answer choices, either together or opposite. Now we know that we have a negative, cutting yourself free from the parachute, and proving. So that means we could cross out the T's. D is out and B is out. Still or likewise. Now, once you get it down to two, just read and see which one sounds better with a better flow. Now, we could use the pruning technique here, and let's go ahead and clear our screen. So when we prune, we see that we have a comma here because of its weight. That's dependent. Nicholas had to cut himself free from the end of the jump and deploy his parachute. Still, he proved Leonardo's pyramidal design could slow the parachute. Or, likewise, Nicholas cut himself free from the end of the parachute and deployed his parachute. Likewise, he proved Leonardo's pyramidal... All right. Right away, you can see the better answer choice here is the word still, because this just doesn't flow right. Answer choice A, remember, look at your answer choices first, label either T or O, then go back, put a circle around that word, and read and label plus or minus, and then match it. For example, if I put two pluses here, that means that the answer would have been together, Or if I would have put two minuses there, it still would have been T together because the symbol is the same. It's going in the same direction, negative to negative, and positive going to positive. Remember, structural clues, it's extra work because you got to read the sentence before and you've got to read the sentence after. Thanks so much for watching this video, and the creepy code for this is pink highlighter. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.